Can you play Bleed?
Yeah, of course.
Dude,
Yeah, I've
hell
actually
yeah.
learned that entire song is like one of those almost exercisey songs. Where
Exactly.
if you're trying to get into Hertas, as a concept, it's kind of cool to go over. So
Nick
yeah, I
is
think like
Nick is a drummer too. Do you know what a herta is?
oh yes, yeah.
Calling me a drummer is very
It's like
forgiving.
It's like 2/16 notes and then 2/8 notes. So it's like da 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 da. And that song
Exactly,
Bleed is just over and over and over for like 5 minutes. Just hurt us.
It's just a Herta but fast, and just it comes back in different ways. So yeah. It's kind of an exercise almost. I
Oh,
love
exactly.
it,
That's why I started learning it. I've been practicing like an hour a day now, just like actual practicing of like a thing that I'm not good at, which is new. Because normally it's just like you play the songs, right? I've fallen into like not a place of improvement. So actually focusing on things that I'm not good at is a novel thing at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, Werner, exactly. You ready to start the show here?
Let's get it done, man. For sure. Thanks for having me on the pod, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So where are you located right now?
So I'm in a town called La Roche-sur-Yon at the moment. I've actually never been there, but it's like in the south-ish of France. It's not quite the south, but it's kind of getting there. And it's actually really, really nice venue today. I forget what it's called. I think it's Kai M with a Q. Very French once again. We're eating many baguettes, great cheeses. It's a good time, man.
So it sounds like it's the way you're describing it with the baguettes and cheese, it sounds like tour life is pretty posh. Is that the case?
So on and off, yeah. So I'd say like the catering on European tours in general is extremely good, like really, really good if you're going to like proper venues. I think like once or twice, and it's funny because you wouldn't think this, but especially in, for example, England, if you go there, it's a lot less posh. Like a lot of the venues are way, way older. I wouldn't necessarily say like complete state of decline, but they're just like less well kept. And then you get to mainland Europe, and I think this has to do a lot with like subsidies that are there for it. Like it's way newer venues. The catering is at an extremely high level. There's more space for everyone. Usually there's no need for shared dressing rooms, all this stuff. So like once you get to mainland Europe, like especially the west of it, it does get a little bit posh in that sense.
Yeah.
Because just the venues, they're really nice. But yeah, I mean, there's also been like one, what venue was this? I think it was in Lille. And this was like an old cinema type of thing. Really, really small, really cramped. And like, I won't get into the details of it, but there were a couple of things which were like actual safety hazards.
Oh, geez.
Like, yeah, that shit wasn't quite good. I'll be honest about that. But I mean, it's on and off. Some of these venues are insanely well done. And this is definitely one of them. This whole place is great. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a really large catering space where I'm right now. There's couches. It's a bit dark in here, but there's like a whole space to sit. And
oh, dude.
Yeah, got
you got like a view and everything.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Normally venues I go to, I'm like shuffled into the basement, and it's just a dark, dingy, like damp, gross place. But maybe that's the difference between the U.S. and the European venues.
I don't necessarily completely think so. It just depends on like the size of venues. It's like the bigger you also get in the US, like the more, well, like posh as you called it, things will get. That will happen for sure. And like the venues we're playing now, like they go up to, let's say, 2,000 to almost 3,000 caps. So they're like a lot bigger. They allow for a lot more people. And the minute you kind of hit that level of size, things just kind of change a little bit. But like the venues like up to 500 cap, like I would say both Europe and US. Yeah, that basement experience that you're describing, yeah. I mean, we've both been there. So
I'm still there, dude.
yeah.
So I don't think we've properly introduced you yet, and please forgive me here. But my understanding, do you pronounce your name Werner?
Yeah, Werner is totally correct.
Okay.
So if you would pronounce this in Dutch or German, like Dutch would be Werner, and if you would go German, it's like Werner.
What do you prefer?
So anything goes, like Werner, Werner, whatever you want to say. It's all good with me, man.
I'm just been familiar with Werner. So Werner, thanks for joining us. And I think the best way I can describe you is a professional bass player, right? Is that how you would describe yourself?
Yes and no. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, on the one hand, like, professional bass player is the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people. But like if you look at my income, for example, there's a lot of like different revenue streams. For example, I teach a lot. I help people out with production. Of course, I play bass live, but also like in other settings when I'm playing live, I might play drums or I might play guitar, or there's like all these different little things that I'm usually doing. And also, like I still have a job on the side, which is now a job for Bucks Music, which is a combination of like high-end customer service and copywriting, which I do, which is now remote. But just before this, like just a couple months ago, I was still working at an Apple store, for example. So professional kind of implies that you're just playing bass and that's what you do. But there's like so many things that I do to kind of make sure that my income is alright and that I get to invest a lot of time into music and bass playing. So it's more that, I would say.
Yeah, from an outside perspective, if I think about somebody that's the bass player in a band like Monuments playing to several thousand people a night, I would imagine, like, as an outsider, you would think, okay, well, they can get by on that. But it seems like these days, there's not a whole lot of money in music, right?
Nope. I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head with that one. I mean, we basically are able to, on a tour like this, pay ourselves per DMs. And I mean, I can share the numbers with you. Like it's literally like a couple $100 to like cover certain expenses and stuff. And sometimes you're able to reimburse yourself for certain musical purchases that you might make. Of course, there's certain endorsements that we have, and like you have less expenses that way. But overall, if you're just like in a band of our size, like Monuments, it's definitely not enough to make a living. It's really just, in that sense, it's a side hustle, and everyone does all kinds of different things to make their living. So that's the way it is, man.
So money is not the motivator. What would you say motivates you to do this?
I mean, like from a very early age, like I've been really, really drawn to music, and like bass was definitely like the big, I would say, catalyst, if that's the right word. Like just the thing that really sprung me onto music, and like it just makes me happy doing it. And I think for the most of us, like we do have this urge to create and to share our craft with the world in a certain capacity. And I say that's really the motivator. Just like this intrinsic like urge to create and to play live in front of people, I guess. And yeah, it's one of those things, because I've often, like in more tough spots, when it's like, is this worth it? When it's just one of those harder days, like especially when I wasn't playing in any bigger bands. It's like you're investing all this time, all this money into this craft, and you're not necessarily seeing anything back from it financially, like at all. And it's like, is it worth it? And then I always go back to that question, like, if I wouldn't be doing this, what would I want to be doing? And the answer is always music. Like it always circles back to, what would I want to be doing if money weren't an object at all? It's music.
Right.
So
there's just
this intrinsic urge to do that. Yeah.
Well, you and I had met on the tour that you had with Aviations, who I wanted to shout out to. I love the projects that you're involved in with AV and with Monuments too. In fact, Nick and I went back when we thought we'd talk to you. We went back and listened to some old Monument stuff and some Aviations. And Nick was telling me, what's your pump up song?
Yeah, no. Well, so I knew.
You got to lift weights to like Monuments, right? Yeah.
No, I was telling Phil, like, whenever, and I don't exactly know why, but whenever I get a new set of headphones, there's like one Monument song that I always put on first, because it's like my bass line, and I don't know why. I mean, I like it. That's why, but it's from the Gnosis album, but it's just funny. And then Phil was like,
"Were you Doxa, right?"
Yeah.
Is it Doxa?
Yeah.
I get that.
And then Phil's like, he told me he was taking lessons from you, and I thought that was pretty awesome. I think it always blows my mind, because I know, both you guys are like so crazy good at what you do. I mean, at least from my perspective as someone who just appreciates music. And then to like hear it's just like, oh, it's just like a side hustle, and to know how much time you spend on it and like the level of expertise that you have, it's I'm grateful that you both do it, because I get to enjoy the end result.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, man. Like Phil is crazy good at what he does. It's been a joy to be able to tour with Phil and see him play every night. And yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that Phil is one of those guys who has invested a lot of time and just energy into his craft. And yeah, man, always love seeing you play, hearing you play, all that stuff. So
well, that's the funny part too. Is my wife told me, she's like, why the hell would you take bass lessons? Like, so from an outside perspective, she thinks like I'm some master that knows everything about the instrument. But like I told you when we first started playing, that there's so much stuff to get better at in all aspects of life, let alone something you've already spent decades honing and practicing. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with you. You said you gravitated towards bass, and what was there a certain bass player that like really inspired you to do this, or maybe a certain band?
No, so the actual inspiration in that sense, that only came later once I had already like picked up the instrument. Like I used to be a cello player from the age of around like, let's say 8 or 9 till high school age. So yeah, 13, something like that. And like for me, like it was always clear that I did have a knack for playing music, and cello was definitely something I was very good at, but especially for my age at the time. But I was not in love with that instrument at all. It was just something like my parents said, "Oh, you should play an instrument. You should do this,"
Right.
and it just kind of gave me a cello. You know, that's kind of how that happened. So it never felt like I had any choice in the matter. And also, at the time, I had this Russian teacher, and she was probably a really, really great teacher, but very strict. And like it was all about like getting it perfect, getting it right, and playing all this classical music, which didn't quite resonate with me. But I guess she taught me a lot, but like the whole process I just did not enjoy. And then when I came to high school, like I think one of the things that actually made me like pick up the bass is kind of funny, but at the time like this movie School of Rock was out.
Cello.
Yeah.
And he just turns it.
And you turn it upside down, and yeah. But like I had seen that thing, and then there was a possibility to take music lessons in high school, and they had a bass in the room, and I had seen that movie, and also remember at the time I went to this sports camp, and one of the sports teachers, like he showed us the movie The Blues Brothers, and there's this song in it. It's called Everybody Needs Somebody. And it's just a really simple bass line. It's very audible. It's really upfront in the mix. And I knew that song, and that had just happened. And then this movie came out, and it just kind of prompted me to, okay, I'm going to try the bass now, I guess. Right? So this also wasn't like a thing, oh, I'm going to be like, bro, I'm going to hit this instrument real hard. I'm going to be great at this. Like, I never wanted to go that route at the time. But then I started listening to like a couple more bands that were in that direction, and especially listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the time, and hearing a bass player like be so upfront in the mix and have, you know, such an impact.
Flea was your first bass inspiration?
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, absolutely.
Wow. A lot of people.
Yeah,
a lot of bass players are into Flea.
Yeah.
What
so
other?
I think that's
what
that's
other?
the
I know the bands that you play in now are very much like progressive rock and like harder.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of stuff that you enjoy listening in your free time?
Ooh, yes, definitely. Like I still listen to a lot of that stuff in my free time, but it depends on the mood, you know. Because like if I just want to like sit back and relax, like I might just put on some jazz. I kind of really like that stuff. It's always been that way.
Who's your jazz?
Funk,
who are you into?
That, yeah. So like always, I used to love Snarky Puppy so much, but always like if I really want to chill a bit, like some Miles Davis will always hit the spot. Like, and this is gonna sound a little bit pretentious, but you know, Chet Baker, like all that stuff, just lay down and chill music. You know, that's what I'll put on like in the bunk after a long day if I want to listen to some music. And yeah, I don't know why that is, but yeah, I mean, if I'm really in a mood where I want to zone into music and really get into what it is that I'm listening to, yeah, then I'll definitely get into prog metal. Like that's just what I like, man.
What prog artists are you into, other than Monuments? I know you were a fan before joining the band too.
Yeah, definitely, man. So there's a lot of stuff. Like I love Carnival, always loved Carnival. So that's always something that goes into heavy rotation.
That's why I ordered. That's why I ordered one of those basses, man, because his bass sounds so cool on those albums.
Yeah, man, Josh Stockman, man, John Stockman, not Josh. There we go. But he's an absolute beast on the bass, and yeah, his sound has inspired me a lot through the years. A lot of Dream Theater. I still circle back to like the older Dream Theater stuff every once in a while. I love that. Textures is really big for me. Listen to a lot of Textures. I think like a lot of people have this, but currently Sleep Token is interesting to me. It's not necessarily prog, but like it does go into that realm a little bit, so I like that. And actually, Outrun the Sunlight, man. Like I've been jamming a lot of that stuff.
Oh man,
so,
you got to check out. Actually, tomorrow the new album comes out, and I'd be very, in particular, this is so selfish for me to say, I'd be so curious to hear what you think of the bass writing on it, because for me, and you can crap on it if you want, but I'm so proud of the work, like the actual like composition of the bass on the thing that comes out tomorrow. I'll send you a copy. So
Yeah, man.
I'm curious.
I've heard it. It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I sent it.
I like the second track and the last track especially.
Nick likes
I
Peter
went-
Pan
nice.
complex.
Yeah, and then the the longer track that you said the last one is awesome too.
Yeah, I like it.
It's good. It's
So
really
you
good.
had somebody they turned the cello sideways and started playing bass. Did you go? Correct me if I'm wrong. You met all the aviation guys at Berkeley. Is that correct?
No, dude.
They were all
I'm
from
like
Berkeley.
they were all from Berkeley, and then there's me and Richard, and we're the only two boys that didn't do the Berkeley thing. We just kind of got sucked into that whole thing through the internet. I mean, just kind of met there, and yeah, I mean that whole thing starting out with aviations, it started for me as a touring job at the time. And there never was the intention at the time to make me a permanent member of that band. But we gelled so well on that tour in 2017. That was our first tour. We toured with a band called Arch Echo. You may know them as well. And that was such a good experience. That was like, okay, this really works creatively and socially. Let's do it. And we've been a band ever since. It's been 6 years now. So
it kind of be hard to not be friends with those guys. They're just so great and incredibly skilled. You mentioned Arch Echo. Yeah. We played with Arch Echo a couple months ago. I forget his name, the guitar player. Maybe
Adam Bentley?
Yes, maybe the most impressive guitar performance I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of guitar players. He absolutely
is he like really big into the lead playing or more rhythmically?
The lead player, actually, the other guitar player was out. The lead player for Arch Echo,
that is Adam Rathowitz, incredible improviser.
Oh my god,
incredible! And he'll never say the same thing twice. It's great. Yeah,
that was so impressive, and that to me, that's what I like about the genre of music that our bands are in is and sometimes it can kind of border on like this egotistical like circus, which I don't necessarily love, but there's something about seeing somebody perform a skilled feat musically that I have to see live. That it's listening to the albums is great, of course, but like wow, they can actually do that thing. It's to me that's part about going to shows. For me, I actually don't necessarily love live shows. But I want to see my heroes do the thing that I think is impossible. Well, I'm curious about when you connected with the Aviations guys and they decided to make you a member, and likewise with Monuments now too.
Yeah.
What's the writing process like for each of those bands? And I'll tell you, in my experience, it always seems like there's one member that seems to be the driving force, and then everybody else sort of fills in the rest of those puzzle pieces. Does that relate to your experience?
Yes and no. I think it's very different from band to band, and there's bands where like everyone will have to will want to have input and everyone is doing something. I would say that for a long time, and probably still like in Monuments, it definitely is the case that I think like Brown is definitely like a driving force behind a lot of the starting ideas. And then there were also times when there were still other members in the band where they would like give little things like little riffs or little pieces, and then that would get built upon. But like I would say for a long time, Brown has been like the driving force of what that is. I think it's starting to change a little bit now, where other members are also like starting to like get those first creative seeds in. But like as far as new material goes with Monuments, I've only written one track with the band. And for that one, like the input that I had was like the full creative reign on Bass World, basically. So I've written all the lines for it, and like I've been writing on that song since the very like beginning of it. So Brown came along with a lot of like the first ideas, and we just built on top of that. But then like the things I would hand in would then again change the song and the structure. And so this wasn't because I wanted to necessarily change something, but just because this is kind of cool, we should build on this, and then it just kind of went from there. But like the first collective writing experience I've had with Monuments is Brown hands in a certain idea and we build on that, if that makes sense.
What's the length of that original idea, would you say? Is it like a riff or like two things sort of strung together, or is it like a full
the almost the entire skeleton was written already before I joined the band. So like he already had this skeleton there, and then after the skeleton was there, like people just kind of went with it. Yeah, to say it like that. And then if you compare that to Aviations, a similar thing will happen, but we have so many different writers, so many people that hand in things. So I will hand in things, Eric will hand in things, James has entire songs written, Sam has a few songs written. So it's a lot more across the board, but again, it's this concept where someone comes up with this concept for something and people start building kind of.
Right.
And it is a fun process, yeah.
I was going to ask, because I know I think both of you joined bands, and you're playing songs, and you just mentioned it, that you did not write. So do you ever go back and have notes or have ideas on tweaks or something to songs that were like the band already exist, or is that like this is a complete outsider asking that question, or is that like a total no-no?
You mean like changing existing songs? Is that
Not
what you
like, I think changing is too strong of a word, but yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely not changing. Like those songs will stay the same.
Yeah.
Like that's just what they are. That's what the people have grown to love.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that does happen, it's funny that you do like ask that question. Certain little things might change in a live context. So, for example, in a song, I won't say which one because you just gotta come and see it live. But like, there's just this kind of groove happening on the drums, and then like we just kind of play with it, and now there's this slappy thing going on top of what that is, and that wasn't there on the recording. It's just like this addition thing that wasn't there, but it doesn't change the song. The songs are exactly as they were on the record. Yeah.
Well, we were both fans of the bands that we're currently members of before we were members, and for me, there is this sort of sacred aspect to a record where you don't want to break it. You know, that was very intentionally recorded in the way that it is presented. Having said that, I kind of come from a little bit of the improvisational world. I don't do a lot of jazz these days, but I get bored playing the same thing twice. Yeah. So honestly, I probably get pretty bored playing Monument song like verbatim to the records. So I do like to make it my own, especially live. But that's actually the beauty of it, is like, I'm not going to record that record again because it's done. It will never be done again. But there is this sort of sacred aspect. The person that I came in after and took his shoes was Connor. And you don't want to take somebody's hard work that was, again, very like precisely recorded and take a dump on it. So there is some like amount of respect that you want to pay towards that person and then their performance. Are you relating to that a bit, Werner?
Well, I think for me, like, I really don't mind, like, if the song asks for it to play a line the same way twice. I do not mind that, and I think that's actually, in my opinion, that's one of the qualities like a good bass player should have in a certain way, that you're able to bring that foundation and that other people can actually almost build on top of what that is. I mean, it's cool to go off the rails every once in a while if the music allows for it, and this is why I still love playing the aviation stuff and all that music. Like, it allows for so much like change, like in the moment. But when we're playing Monument stuff, like a lot of the time I will want to play a riff exactly the same way, so it sounds on the rails, so I'm locked in with the kicks, so I'm locking in with whatever Brown is like rhythmically doing, because that's the way it will translate the best to the audience that's in front of you. And like from an egotistical bass player's perspective, of course, I want to have some more fun and do weird things. But in order to make things sound good, I think like a lot of the times I feel very strongly about delivering a performance almost note for note the same.
Yeah, so that's my ego coming through, right? I try to have like a low ego about my music stuff, but I do like having fun with it. So yeah, the improvisation keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Do you ever, you mentioned people wanting to hear what's on the record when they come to see you. Do you have people that you engage with before or after the shows that are familiar with the bass parts and say like, hey, remember in that song you changed the bass part from like a F to a F sharp? And does that ever happen to you? I could imagine it happens a lot with drummers.
Nope, it hasn't happened a single time. I think, it's just, I mean, it's just harder to pick up with the style of music that we're doing with Monuments, I reckon. I think that a lot of the things that are very, very audible will just be vocals and, I say, drums. I think with guitar, like Brown also, I think, prides himself in like really laying that performance in a certain way, and that's how he delivers it. So I also think that isn't up for that much change, because also the guitar, they're so rhythmical in Monuments. He barely plays leads live. He doesn't really play solos.
He barely plays upstrokes.
All about rhythm guitar. Yeah, exactly. He downstrokes all the time. And that's why I think like people will automatically focus more on like a vocal performance or a drum performance, because those parts, I think there's a lot more room in those to actually change things live.
I recall hearing Mike Portnoy would talk about writing his drum parts for people to recall live, and his notion was that he wanted to see people air drum his parts back at him. So like he's always like exactly the same every time, like you're saying.
Yeah. I really respect the musician's ability to do that, because it's so easy, like for your inner musician to go, I want to change it, I want to do different things that excite me. And I definitely feel that, but there's different ways to go about this. I think what's really inspired me on this tour, like we see Leprous every night, of course, because we're on that same bill, and like what they do to keep things interesting, they don't go off the rails and improvise, but they change up their set list every night. So there's always different stuff, and they say, well, this keeps it interesting, this keeps us on our toes, because we're doing these different things, and like it takes away that boredom, because all of a sudden you're having to like zone into these other tracks that the other night you weren't even doing, and next night it might not even be there. So like that, there are ways, I think, to make playing music really interesting, even though you're delivering a performance that's very like to the book almost.
I want to eat baguettes and see Monuments and Leprous now.
Let's go to France, dude.
Sounds fun. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, you could come over, man. I mean, all you have to do is fly over. We'll guest list.
I mean, it sounds awesome.
So Outrun got offered, and I don't know if we're gonna participate because it's a pretty big challenge to tour internationally. But we got offered to play Dunk Fest, which I believe is in Belgium. And I bring this up because for us to travel across the world like that is like a really, really big commitment, and not just monetary. Like we will lose money no matter what, and they want to pay us to go there and feed us in houses and stuff. So given all that, there's really no financially viable way for us to do it. Have you traveled? I know you've toured in the United States with me and Europe. Have you traveled outside of these continents?
Out of, you mean Europe and America?
Yeah.
I mean, the only musical work I've done is like at a festival in Africa at some point, but that was a very different role. I was basically being kind of a musical director for a little festival that was there. This was in Chad, like in the middle of Africa, kind of funny in retrospect.
Yeah.
But that was a really good time. But like in the context of a gent band, no.
Well, I want to take that quick tangent. What is gent?
What is gent? It's I mean, Periphery said it best, right? It's not a genre.
Yeah, there it is. Well, so the reason I ask about the international stuff is the logistics are crazy. So can you talk me through some of the logistics? Like if you were going to give me advice of traveling and performing internationally, from the visas and where you're going to stay and how much it costs, can you run me through what it's like to tour internationally?
So this is really going to heavily depend on what type of tour you're doing, what size, like how many people are involved with it, and that type of stuff. So are we going from the perspective of you're all organizing this self and you're trying to book a headliner tour by yourself, or what's the what are we talking about?
Well, somebody like let's gear it towards me selfishly, right? So for Outrun the Sunlight, we're not a huge band. We do seem to have a lot more audience in Europe, but I don't think enough to necessitate as a headliner. So we'd probably try to do something like jump on a festival, maybe 2, and then do a small like 1 or 2 week tour and just like piggyback on another tour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think like if you're trying to do it that route, the most important thing is get the basics of your gear right. So make sure you have like a very portable version of what probably your in-ear rig is, because you guys play with in-ears these days, and make sure it will fit in like to a couple of SKBs, right? So like just a couple of cases that you can take with you, and make sure it's not too involved to have to plug and what do you call that? Patch it all together is what I was trying to say. Like the less time you spend on that, like on a day-to-day basis when you're in a different country, the better that is. And also make sure you have backup solutions, because if something breaks, right, you don't want to be fucked just because one piece of gear breaks. Make sure you have different ways of like getting your show on the road. That's really important. Then I think like the next thing about that is, I mean, accommodation is going to be really tricky. So are you going to like try to hotel it? Are you going to like sleep in a van? Make sure you have like a really good solution of how to make this viable, depending on the amount of time that you're spending there. Because if it's only a couple of shows, you could slum it in a van and you'd be fine. But if you're saying I'm going to do 2 months on the road, you don't want to be doing that. So you got to make sure you have a different solution in place.
Why don't you want to do that?
Sorry, what's that?
Why would you not want to do that?
Yeah, that's true. Why wouldn't you? Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to go back to, for example, the first tour with Aviations that we did, where we were definitely slumming it. Like one of the solutions that we went for is like way ahead of time. We were trying to get contacts in every city where we would have a chance to maybe like just have a shower at someone's house that, you know, just so, because we were slumming, we were sleeping in that van. It didn't even have bunks, you know, we were just sleeping on a driving couch. I mean, kind of insane driving yourself. And then you don't even get to shower for weeks if you're, so make sure you have this the social and almost hygienic aspect that's taken care of. But I mean, there's so many like things that you need to talk about here, because it's that, and it's also making sure that your diet is right. What do you do if someone gets sick? What do you do if someone gets injured? Like, think ahead about as many things as you can, because you're not like in the comfortable zone of home where you people can just like go back and forth and it's easy, and people that have gear for you if something drops out, like you're in a place where you're kind of on your own if you're going to a different continent. So just think about everything that can go wrong, basically, and make sure you have some type of solution in place. I could keep talking about this for hours because there's so much, but yeah.
So what has gone wrong on? I think you've been on the road now for a week-ish. What has anything gone wrong on your tour so far?
Yeah, many things. You're always problem solving. That's the kind of the zone you're in. I think like the first thing that happened already is basically like planning wise, getting all the gear of 3 bands like into a trailer and into a bus. There was too little space, and there was way more gear than was actually calculated for. And probably this could have been fixed by doing more legwork, but we had to leave like a lot of gear behind. We did, Lepros did, Calandra did. We all had to leave stuff behind. So one of the things that got left behind were, for example, brown spare guitars. And what do you know, on a couple of the first nights, strings break. Just like, yeah, and this has never happened. Like, he never breaks strings, and all of a sudden he's breaking strings, and now we're having to drop 2 or 3 songs from our set for that night. And this has happened on 2 or 3 shows. Like, and that's ever since now it hasn't happened anymore. But this is one of the many things that can go wrong, And yeah, it can be a tough spot if there's something that you didn't really like think about in advance.
Are you guys slumming it in the van, or are you getting good places to stay?
I mean, we are, in that sense, we're really lucky. We tour in a nightliner, so that it's probably the most, like, in that sense, luxury way to travel. If you're doing these type of shows, you have your own bunk. These buses have extremely good suspension. You're driving through the night, so you're just sleeping while you're getting to the next city. You wake up in the next city. I mean, some people sleep better than others, but I'm lucky to get good sleep on that thing. It's different for everyone, but I think for me, I'm in a really, really good place in that sense. Mm-hmm. Just not having to drive myself and having a good bed to return to every night.
I'm taking over the conversation.
No, I mean, you've got
okay. I have another
background. I'm happy. I mean, it's fascinating. I'm just listening to.
You were talking about growing up, learning some of the classical stuff on the cello, and so, something that I think a lot about, and I've been trying to identify where this came from, but I'm a little bit ashamed of the music that I enjoy, which tends to be like heavier, more aggressive stuff. And I think it's because when I was growing up, my parents would be like, "What are you listening to that crap for?" And they would literally make me throw out my metal band T-shirts. So now I'm rebelling by buying more metal band T-shirts as a nearly 40-year-old man. So my question is, you mentioned your mother. What do your parents think about the music that you are performing?
Yeah, that's kind of funny that you asked that, because I think like when I was starting out, like saying, okay, I want to do this, I want to go to music school, all that. Like when I said I was going to music school, that already raised some eyebrows, because I started off studying something different, and this was kind of due to also like social pressure. Like no one around me really was taking the music route, and also my parents said, "Oh, just go to college, go study history or law or whatever." And like those things did not really resonate with me. Again, it was like getting the cello pushed into my hands. Like, this is what you should be doing, And at the time, like when I said, okay, I do want to go to music college, I do want to do that thing, there was like already a little bit of resistance there. Or like, are you sure about this? Should you be doing this? But then I think like they did really like the aviation stuff. They used to really like the induction stuff when I was in that band. I think Monuments is a bit like harsh for them still. Like, it just, I mean, all the, the screams and stuff, and like just big chuggy riffs and all that. Like, it resonates a little bit less with them, but they understand why I love to do it, and they understand I have a passion for it, and they really respect that. So, in that sense, it's all good. But I think one of the important things for them was also to see that there was like a financial future in it. Which in a sense there isn't, because like you have to be at such a high level for the music to actually pay your bills. But what was really important for them, that they could see that I was making money in different avenues and making this lifestyle sustainable through doing all kinds of other things that were financially viable. And after they kind of saw that I was able to do that and like juggle these different things, that's when they really like felt really comfortable with me doing the music thing, I guess. But that took a couple of years, like I didn't have like all these things just set up right off the gate, like teaching lessons and doing production things and playing as a session and musician. This wasn't all there. Like I had to build this, and like only after building that to some extent, that's when my parents really felt this was a good life decision in that sense.
Right. I have a technical question then.
Yeah.
So you're presenting me with some new concepts and challenges on our instrument. What would you say would be something that you wish you were better at on the bass guitar?
On the bass guitar, what would I want to be better at? It's a really good question.
Let me rephrase this. If you were to take a lesson from a bass player, who would you pick? Because they probably have a technique that you're going for that you're not doing. That's
the thing, because that's kind of what I was getting at. Like what I've been learning over the years to kind of repress the boy that wants to get more technical and play faster and more notes. Like I think the one thing I wanna get better at is be a more functional bass player. So like learn to serve the music even better, and oftentimes that means using less weird techniques and playing less notes. But I'm not just saying that in a playing context. I also really mean that in a writing context, because usually a lot of stuff that will naturally flow out me if I program something in Logic or in Guitar Pro, it's very notey, very very quickly, because that's just something that I gravitate towards as a musician, because I like to just play notes and shred, snap, and tap and do double thumbs or whatever, But like a lot of like the more I've played for audiences, the more I've seen that very often that doesn't resonate with audiences. They want to hear something meaningful in a way, and a lot of times what's meaningful as a bass player is to really make sure you reinforce what the rest of the band is doing, and that means, I wouldn't say dumbing down what you're playing, but simplifying,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I still find myself like outputting a lot of stuff that necessarily isn't maybe what do you call that? But the stuff that will resonate the most with the people that are listening. And I think I want to be able to do that more, like have my playing resonate with an audience.
What do you think it is that resonates? I'm going to propose a thesis that people just want to bob their head. All right. Like people just want to kind of feel good,
Yeah, man. I mean, you're reinforcing something to move to and something to dance to, and to bob your head to. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And very oftentimes that is like just play your quarter notes, play your 8 notes, or if there's accents and the kicks playing them, focus on those. Don't overplay. You don't need to sweep pick over everything. You don't need to put a slappy, cool tappy lick over something. It's, even though it's fun, it's a lot of fun. But I feel like the more I'm aging as a musician, this sounds like such an old head thing to say, but the more I realize that just kind of isn't the way, like at least doesn't seem to be. So
yep,
I think that's it for me, man.
I actually noticed that things are more powerful when you do less in an interesting way, that the contrast more impact. Well, so when I was in college, I played in an orchestra, and I remember playing some Beethoven pieces, and I'm sitting next to the rest of the upright like string bass players. They're like, man, this Beethoven's like kind of boring. And then it's like super boring for 99% of the time. And then 1% of the time, it's an impossible like shred Beethoven thing. Yeah. It's very interesting that the role of a bass, it's 99% function and then like 1% impossible.
Yeah. Sometimes it kind of gets like that, that's for sure. And I do like those little moments where it's like impossible in that sense. But I mean, it's also on, for example, on the new Aviations record, there's a couple of those moments where we're really like pushing the bass up by almost like, I think 10 dB or something, just to showcase a tiny little something that's added in there. And oftentimes that's not a bass solo or like a super involved thing, but just like an accent or a little lick. And it's really cool to push those moments up, but like for the rest, I want to make sure I'm under the musical mess that's kind of above me, for sure.
Well, I don't know if I got this out of you yet. Do you have a favorite bassist or somebody that inspires you?
Ooh, a favorite one. This tends to really change from time to time, because like I think like 6 years ago, that answer for me really was Nolly from Periphery. I just used to love what he did, and I think like I used to love him for that functionality that he would bring to the table. Like one of the things I remember hearing him say is like when I'm playing, wanna almost be like I don't know how he said it exactly, but what he was getting at is that he wants his bass sound to like glue together with the guitars and be one sound. He didn't want people to hear like, oh, there's this bass part going on, but he wants the sound that everyone's hearing to be this one wall of sound. And like that whole statement, that way of approaching bass, that really resonated with me for a time. Who it is now, I mean, I've always liked Jaco Pastorius a lot. This kind of a bit of a classic answer to give, but yeah, just the way he approached the instrument was always really cool. Again, James Jamerson, it's always going to be up there. Victor Wooten has been really, really important to me, still is, I think. And I think also Victor Wooten in the way he approaches education these days, I think like he's really up there. But currently I have a real fascination, and this really goes away from the point which I was making, is play more functional. It's Michael Manring.
Oh, I love Manring.
Oh man, I love
Attention Deficit. We used to be really into Michael Manring. Fretless stuff. I saw him play once live in San Francisco, and he has the G tuners on both ends of the bass, and it's that awesome Zahn fretless. And he'll do like wacky harmonics and then tune them mid harmonic, and it's just like the most unique, inspired pieces. And then on the flip side of Michael Manring, he does like incredibly boring like jazz, this like hired gig stuff, which I don't know if you listen to any of that stuff, but he's like so good.
I know he does it. That side of him I have not explored at all. I'm really into like the solo stuff he does. The way he approaches the instrument, which is so unique. Like you don't see anyone doing what he does. And it's fascinating. But like he for the way he plays bass, it's barely even bass anymore. He's made it into this whole different instrument. You know, the retuning. It almost sounds like an organ at times. You know, it's
he's incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the music that it seems like the three of us appreciate and at least for me, it's like I'm always seeking new and different, and that's why I like the prog stuff. Is it's always seemed to feed that and scratch that itch.
Oh yeah,
which I love.
Man.
Did you? Sorry, did you?
I was going to say you were talking about pushing the volume on the bass, like in a certain part of the song to sort of make it a little more noticeable. And I just want to say I totally take for granted all of that stuff. Like the finished product. I mean, I'm sure I would notice it. I'll start to notice it now, but I think that I'm a pretty informed, I think, consumer of music, but
You're talking about the mixing.
Yeah, I'm just talking about, mixing specifically now, but just like the layers in general, like talking about like handing parts in and then working stuff together and then making changes. And then once you even have all that stuff, the mixing, and I mean, it's mind blowing to me. And I want to say, I just really appreciate it, but totally take it for granted at times, but it's amazing.
I don't know. People have no idea what goes into making a record. I mean, you're talking about Nolly, and I think the reason that he has that approach to the bass guitar is he is also an audio engineer and mixer.
Yeah.
So he understands the big picture, which is what you're saying you don't understand. Like you understand the result of it. And something I didn't realize until I started mixing myself, which if anybody can do it, I mean, it's not necessarily an easy skill to master or be good at, but if you have any audio editing software, you can see how different wave files or any audio file blends together with another. And if you just start experimenting with EQ and compression and just seeing like how they affect another audio source, you can see how mixing works. So a very simple example is like when I mix this podcast, I cut out all the low end frequencies. I do something called a high pass filter pretty aggressively. So there's no bottom end. And the reason I do that on a podcast is you will get fatigued by hearing a low frequency for too long. And you'll just feel like this podcast is unbearable. And that's just because it's so booming. There's so much energy from that low end that your psychology gets broken. And there's a lot of psychology to mixing too. There's a lot to it, and it's really interesting. So if people have I use Reaper. You can use GarageBand. If you have that on your computer, you can start experimenting and just like taking people talking and mixing them together and see what an EQ does. It's kind of fun.
I will say I've listened to songs and I'm like, oh, I wish I could hear the bass line better right now in the song. And then even going in this conversation, I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like it's supposed to sound like that. Like this isn't an accident. Especially some of the bands that are so technical. So it's
we're taking away from Werner here,
yeah,
but
No, you're not. I
You,
feel like I've been talking way too much already.
no,
It's
no,
like,
no. That's why
I
you're
love
here.
it, yeah. You've
So
been great.
we on the show we do a segment at the end that we call favorites, and this favorites tends to be things that are off topic. However, here I'd be curious to hear some off topic thing from you. But what I really like to know is if you have any sort of musical recommendations, things that we should be listening to, other than Aviations and Monuments.
yeah.
You got new Aviations coming out soon.
That would be a cheat code for sure. No. I think that what should I say here? How many am I allowed to name here?
As much as you want, as much time as you have. Let's do.
Okay. So this is an interesting one because there's like so many different things happening. But I don't know if you guys have seen the Netflix series The Young Pope and the New Pope.
No.
So this is all done by a director called Sorrentino, and like the musical direction on this stuff is so cool. There's jazz and there's techno and there's so much happening, and I love that. So that's definitely one.
Nice.
Another one I want to really shout out right now is Hans Zimmer.
Yes.
It's anything Hans Zimmer related. So we're listening to a lot of that on the road currently, and it's also changed over music from our set into Leprous' set. So just like rediscovering those
Which
tunes
movie?
and all that. A lot of different things. So there's currently the one going on from Interstellar. Like there's also
the organ is so good.
Organ is happening. But there's a lot. Like we're changing this up every night actually. But that's definitely something. What else do I really want to shout out here? I mean, I think a lot of like listeners of you like already are familiar with this, but Sungazer, like I think they're doing really interesting stuff. That's one for me. And what else? For some reason, I've been listening to a lot of Sun O recently.
Oh yeah,
and you guys know that stuff.
I do.
Which is also very soundscapey. It's just very droney.
See, I love that. That's your minimalist, your old man vibe now, right? Like do less.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's kind of what's happening, because you would kind of expect me to name all this prog stuff, but that's not necessarily the thing I listen to mainly, and I think we touched on this at the beginning of the podcast as well. But that really feels. I mean, I still love like a lot of prog, and there's so much interesting stuff coming out right now. But I think I've like overconsumed prog for such a long time that, especially like creating it and writing it, there's only so much headspace you have for a certain thing. So I think you kind of want to inform yourself with different things as well. And I think that's where this all stems from. I reckon it's kind of hard to like project that onto yourself. Like, why do I listen to what I listen to? But maybe that's it. Could be.
Yeah, I feel like listening to prog metal in particular is like eating the most dense chocolate cake. Like it's amazing, but like you don't want it over and over and over. It's like a little much. Yeah. So how about non-music stuff? Are there any movies, TV shows, books, things that you're into? Clothing? We actually, most of the podcasts here we talk about like leather goods and boots and shoes and things like that. So if there's something you're into outside of this list,
that's funny that you say that, man, because like actually currently like I've never been interested in fashion or that type of stuff in any way, except like buying simple things that semi look good, like a good fitting t-shirt, nice pair of fitting pants, but I never even remotely looked at brands at all. And then now actually something that we're discussing also with Monuments is basically stage look, like kind of what type of image do you want to like portray on a stage, but also in new promo shots and that type of stuff. And for example, we are going to have a look at this company called Demo Baza. Not sure if you know it.
No.
But it's kind of designer clothes. It definitely isn't that higher price segment, but they are going to show us around like what they do and what kind of like what inspires them to make what they make. And they have really a unique looking stuff. It's almost like a little bit like post. That's the right word.
Say that again. Sorry, we cut out for a second.
Apocalyptical, kind of a little bit. Looks very futuristic in that sense. And I think like just as of late, because we're discussing this stuff more, it's been interesting. So in the sense of fashion, that's a cool brand to shout out maybe there. Not sure if I'm gonna buy anything because it's pretty high priced.
No, you got to make them buy it for you, right? You're repping the brand.
Exactly.
Yeah,
am I right?
That's the perk of the job. Like everything else is poverty, but you might get some cool clothes out of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's actually we did buy some collective clothes at actually a place called All Saints. I don't know if you have this in the US too. Yeah, but we did buy this like with the band. We went out shopping together and tried on different looks and stuff. feels like a silly thing to do, but yeah, we did that.
It matters. All right. Well, Nick, do you have a favorite? I laugh because Nick never can remember to choose things that he enjoys.
It's every single time, and I always forget. I mean, definitely check out Monuments because it's awesome. And I guess I've been listening to Haken a lot lately.
Yeah, man.
So that'll be my favorite.
Nick was talking up Cockroach King before we started.
I was saying like that's a wild song.
It's very strange, but it's good.
No, it's a like you were saying, it's like the chocolate cake. Like it's pretty. Excuse me. It depends on the band. I mean, there are some dense chocolate cake out there to be found in the jam world. So I think it's interesting because I mean, you said it's not a genre, but the range is pretty wide. Like if you look at some other genres or subgenres, like they get to be pretty narrow, and I think that this one has a lot of different stuff in it, which I think makes it.
Haken does?
No, just
the genre,
prog and gent in general.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's all over the place, man. And there's like decades now of like Rush, and there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
Werner, have you been to San Diego when on tour? Did you guys stop?
Yeah.
Okay, I just took my first vacation in years. You know, we had the COVID stuff, and
yeah, of course,
nobody could leave, and my wife and I just powered through it and had a baby and like worked a lot. So we took our first vacation last month, and I went to San Diego. Incredible. We had an incredible time. Not only did we escape the cold weather here in Chicago, but they have. Let me describe San Diego. If I count how many words it is, it's like 4 words. Flamin' hot Cheeto burrito is how I would describe San Diego. So the Mexican food there, it's like they're like next to Mexico, so it's so like good. It's like kind of authentic. But then they're like, you know what? We got to put some California in this. How about some Cheetos? And then like what they're known for there, like the San Diego or California burrito is like just load up that burrito with French fries and steak. You're like, all right, there's your burrito. So San Diego, incredible food. I actually really unironically loved the Flamin' Hot Cheeto burrito. It was really good and like made me feel really gross later. And then I'm wearing this hat. There's the best beer I've ever had in San Diego.
Really good beer.
I suppose I did realize that they're sort of. Are they like the cutting edge on the beer scene in the world? I don't know.
I mean, they were. I feel like California and San Diego, especially, was like the micro, like they were like at the very beginning of all that. So I think a lot of those guys.
It's evolved since then. Yeah. So this place that I'm wearing is called Peer Project, which is like. Let me put it this way: every beer I had. And they will serve you like little 2-ounce tasters.
Can I qualify something? Yeah. I mean American beer because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like
you got some good beer over there.
Yeah,
too.
There's some pretty good beer. I mean, like going through France and Belgium and other places. I mean, there's some pretty good. I'm not going to try to be an American and have San Diego take credit for like all the best beer in the world. Anyway, sorry.
They're very good. So
but it is up there from what I'm hearing. That's for sure. Yeah.
What's that? Say that again.
But it is up there from what I'm hearing.
It's good.
San Diego's good. This place called Peer Project, every beer I had, and we had, again, like many 2-ounce tasters, every beer was a different color and was better than the last.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. If you go to San Diego and people living in San Diego, you're spoiled because you got amazing beer. We went to Stone, which is amazing. We accidentally stumbled across a street festival one day and had so much fun. Had like the best mango I've ever had. It's San Diego. I'm blown away. And my wife's like, why do we live in Chicago?
Yeah.
It's like,
you're doing it wrong,
and then right now, Werner, it's literally like sleeting ice right now. It's terrible.
It's not so nice here, yeah.
I'm so sorry, man. Yeah, we're lucky right now. I mean, we started like in Scandinavia, like we were in Norway, Sweden, that stuff. Pretty cold there, but not even that extreme, funnily enough. But now we're like getting to the south of France and it's warming up, and we're going to drive to Spain and Portugal, and it's gonna be great for a minute, and then it's off to Eastern Europe where it will be really, really freezing again. So yeah, I'm getting spoiled right now, and I don't want the cold. So I'm kind of hearing where you're coming from, man.
Yeah,
nice.
Well, hey, let's wrap it up here. Thanks for doing this with us. It was a little bit unexpected. I didn't think we would have you do this. This was supposed to be our bass lesson time, man.
Well, yeah, it's true. Man.
I'm really excited that I was able to hijack it.
Just
hear about what's going on.
What do we want to learn next week, Werner? You just want to watch me try to play bleed at, I think it's 115 BPM. I got it up to 95. So maybe we just do that.
Because I think that may actually be cool to go over, because I think we very briefly discussed like 3-finger technique and like how to get hurdles down with a different leading finger. So I think we talked about like having your ring finger as a leading finger while playing that type of stuff, like that type of thing.
Actually, do that again. So I'm doing ring finger, middle finger, index, and then middle again.
That's also possible. See. Okay, so this is one of the things we can definitely talk about, because you could do that, what you're saying, but you can also bounce back from the same finger and angle your wrist a bit. So if this is a string right here, you could go. Is
that how you prefer to do it?
I could do. So in Bleed, when I'm playing the intro riff of it, yes, definitely. That's definitely the way I prefer to do it.
Okay.
But this
is what we'll work on.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll set up something for next week. Thanks again for doing this, man. And everybody out there, thanks for listening. Big round of applause for Werner here.
And go listen to Bleed by Meshuggah. And you'll know what they're talking about.
That should
honorary.
Yeah.
That's right. You got it.